सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The expectation from you, I can understand, is that we will talk about what happened around Tawang on the 9th of this month. It happened on the 9th of this month. The story broke on the 12th. One reason it took 3 days breaking is that the two countries, both India and China, do not want to talk about these things as much as possible. And second, because this is so far out, the place is really far. In some ways, the place might be even more remote than say the LAC regions in eastern Ladakh. The details are still trickling in. So first of all, let's try and understand where exactly has it happened and why this place may be of interest both to India and China, Indian Army and the Chinese PLA. So look at this map. Now this is a map that I requested, that my colleague Snehesh Alex Philip, our defense editor, requested somebody called Damien Simon. I'm not sure if that's the real name or not, but whoever you are, thank you Damien Simon for doing this map. You are a mysterious being, we don't know who. Damien Simon tweets under the handle Detresfa. So Damien Simon drew this map for us. If you see this map, this tells you first of all, I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. We don't have fancy equipment like a screen at the back which I can touch and you can see what's happening there. TV channels have that, but TV channels also make it sound like a war has broken out all the time and fighter planes are flying on both sides. Such a thing hasn't happened. A clash has happened, however, in which a bunch of people have got injured, about 30 on the Indian side, 6 of whom are hospitalized in Guwahati. I believe, again on the evidence of Snehesh, these are probably cases of fracture but not life-threatening injuries. Thank God for that, although fractures also sound bad enough. Nevertheless, look at this place, look at the topography. We can't get closer than this to the terrain, but see this. And some areas you will recognize. For example, you know Tawang. So see Tawang on this map. Tawang, then you see, you go northeast of Tawang, 25 kilometers, and you come to the place where this clash has taken place. So 25 kilometers northeast of Tawang is where this clash has taken place, and that's the area called Yangtze. It's also called Mango Chuna. Indian Army calls it Mango Chuna. Now, if you look at the other side of the map, and we'll blow it up for you. When you see that map, and you will see this expanded on our screen, you will see a ridge. That's where the Indian Army is. And Indian Army's positions are generally marked. These are not precise. These are generally marked that this is where Indian Army has presence in sizable numbers. So if you see that, then 1, 2, 3, 4 positions are marked. Actually, there are 6 positions. But the Detresfa has marked 4 of these for us. That's good enough. But the important thing is, look at this ridge. In the mountains, it's the ridges and the passes and the valleys that matter. We keep on telling you all the time, because valleys and passes is where movement can take place from, and ridges is from where you can control what's going on around you. So heights, peaks, ridges. So this ridge, the Yangtze ridge, is under Indian Army's control. Indian Army is sitting there. And in India's perception, the LAC begins somewhere beyond that. The Chinese dispute this area, and the Chinese social media now has been talking about this, and you will see the usual eye on China from our young columnist Adil Brar, which will talk about some of this. Chinese social media has been in fact saying, Chinese nationalists have been saying. So this entire area of what we call as Yangtze and Chinese called as Dongzhang, that is Chinese territory, and Chinese PLA should go and capture it. Obviously, there is a small problem there for the Chinese PLA that the Indian Army is already present there. So what happened in this case is, once again, if you look at the map, and again, I'm blowing it up. Once again, when you expand the map, you will see a water course. That is Shonachu. Shonachu is a rivulet, a small river, but a fast small river. This is the Himalayas, almost at 15,000 feet plus. The ridge, by the way, is about 17,000 feet. So this is a rivulet which then turns into Nuranang River. Nuranang River then reaches closer to the Tawang region. The Nuranang River also gives us the gift of a beautiful fall, of which you can see tourist pictures on my screen. Now, this is where a lot of Indian tourists go now, but Nuranang is where a very bitter and vicious battle had taken place in 1962. In 1962, we know that the Indian Army had a debacle and very few units were able to dig their heels in and fight. This was one of those places where an Indian unit fought. So 4 Garhwal rifles, in fact, a unit under a very junior officer, a second lieutenant S.N. Tandon. That one dug in with a bunch of very strong Garhwalis, and they resisted the Chinese, and they faced 5 to 6 attacks from the Chinese until they were overwhelmed. And this is where a soldier, Jaswant Singh Rawat, won his Mahavir Chakra. The story was that a Chinese medium machine gun was giving the Indian defenders a lot of trouble. So he, along with a couple of other comrades, went and assaulted that position and dragged that medium machine gun back. And it was in that action, while he was bringing the MMG back, that he was shot and he died. After that, many myths were created about him. And if you go there, you will hear these stories as if he was the only one who fought in that battle, helped along by 2 young Monpa women. Monpa is the predominant tribe in this region. Now we know that wartime folklore always builds up. So part of the folklore also is a little installation like a temple to Jaswant Singh Rawat, who is now seen to be the protecting deity of this area. And the tourists who go there visit this memorial. You will find Indian defense ministers, military chiefs, all visit that area. So that is the Nuranang River. So just to give you a perspective, this is where this stream joins in and forms. So this is just to give you the perspective geographically and geotactical, geostrategic also. So we know where we are. So Sonachu meets Nuranang River. And Nuranang River is something that we remember. In fact, Garhwal Regiment, 4th Garhwal, got its battle honors for Nuranang. Battle honors, Nuranang. Now, what exactly happened here? Details are sketchy and we don't have any videos. So first of all the videos you are seeing on your TV channels, they have nothing to do with what happened in this sector. Nothing. None of the videos you see on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, or on your TV channels, none of them has anything to do with this clash. Most of those videos are from Galwan or from other parts of Ladakh. There was the first clash at Finger 4 in Ladakh, and there were other clashes elsewhere. So either they are from those clashes, or the odd one is also from Sikkim. There was also the odd clash in Sikkim. So these videos have come up from there. We haven't seen any video of the latest clash in the Yangtze or the Tawang region. So anything you see is about something else. And in fact, I am surprised and disappointed, although all channels say put the date there and this is about that, but that conveys the impression that this is a video of the clash that took place this time. This clash, again, the difference this time is that this time, immediately after the clash, commanders from both sides met. They had a flag meeting and they decided to resolve things instead of letting the tension fester, which was the case in Ladakh. So that's a different. Now that's important that the two sides have decided to de-escalate locally, unlike in Ladakh. But at the same time, it's quite significant and quite surprising and disappointing that this has happened just a couple of weeks after Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping had at least had a casual conversation in Bali at the G20 summit. In fact, it was Prime Minister Modi who took the initiative of going up and greeting Xi Jinping. Now, is this a message from Xi Jinping? It's possible because this is China, this is the Chinese PLA. PLA is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, which also owns the country. It's most unlikely, forget unlikely, it's impossible that PLA would have tried to do something like this without clearance at the highest level. So the Chinese are trying to give some message. We'll speculate a little bit on that. We can't speak with too much wisdom. But we can do some strategic analysis around it as we go along. So what the Chinese did was, again, if you see this part of the map where the ridge is, see if you imagine the Indian soldiers on this ridge and they are looking down on the Chinese territory. The Chinese territory, again, when we enlarge this picture, you will see that there is a tiny village there. In fact, it's so tiny that I counted the dwellings there after enlarging the picture, and I counted 48 dwellings. 48 dwellings, maybe 2 floors. There is also a little bit of what looks like a car parking or maybe a playground. I don't know. These are the villages that the Chinese are setting up in border areas, particularly along the borders of India. They are called Shaokang villages. Shaokang is a complex term in China, in their language. So Shaokang means moderately prosperous society. This is some kind of a Chinese utopia. What this means in this case is a well-off, comfortable village. So this is the second one that's come up along China's line of actual control with India. So this one, Indian positions overlook this village, and these villages, Shaokang villages, are actually dual-use villages. So they are used for civilians. The Chinese bring in their civilians to settle them here, particularly PLA veterans, but these also serve as staging posts or camps also for their active soldiers. So it's from here that the Chinese crossed the stream, came to the Indian side, climbed the ridge and tried to either dislodge the Indians or more likely, tried to block the path which is used to supply these Indian units. These Indian units on the ridge in the very front are not supplied through a road. The Chinese have built a road which comes almost close to the ridge. And you can see that road also on the map. Indian side, on the other hand, has paths, mountain paths, through which patrols come and supply these frontline troops. And that is what it looks like the Chinese were trying to block when they were challenged, and then these fisticuffs took place. And then you've read all the details. The Chinese, as usual, brought in their medieval weapons, your gully fight weapons, right? Indians also by this time have become wise. They will not be caught by surprise as they might have been initially in Ladakh. So Indian side also fought back, and soon enough word spread, and more Indian soldiers came in from close by formations, and in this case at least Indian soldiers were not outnumbered as was the case in Galwan. In this case, from whatever information we are getting now, it looks like the Chinese were outnumbered and they went back. Now again, where exactly is this? Now if this is Tawang, Tawang is the most familiar landmark for us. This is, as I said, 25 kilometers northeast. So this is not towards Bhutan. I've seen some accounts that say, oh, this is on the tri-junction. So now in the mountains, if you see on a large map, it does look like this is very close to Bhutan. But from Tawang, it's not towards Bhutan. That would be northwest. This is towards the northeast. So that is where this clash took place. In fact, if anything, this place is also northeast of a place called Bumla. Bumla, as we know, is almost like a border outpost between Tibet and Arunachal Pradesh. Now, this is not the first time some tension has taken place in this area. The Yangtze area, the Chinese have been eyeing it for a long time. Why? One, because they see it as a kind of entry point into the Tawang region, but more importantly, they also see in this area India on a height on the ridge overlooking their Shaokang village and their formations. Also, they have historic claims. There are about 6 little areas of land on Arunachal border where LAC is disputed between the two sides, where the two sides have active differing perceptions. This is one of those. So, in October 2021, a clash-like situation had arisen. That had been diffused before a clash took place. This time, obviously, that did not happen. Also, since then, since Galwan, Chinese have been building up across Arunachal Pradesh. Now the Chinese have brought in about 4 oversized brigades across the Arunachal sector, and they are almost permanently located. There was an expectation that after the National People's Congress, when Xi Jinping was re-elected for the 3rd time, these units will go back, but that hasn't happened. These are called combined armed brigades. It's very difficult to explain what a brigade is in China's context. So combined armed brigade, I would just define as something like an oversized brigade, maybe like 2 brigades of the Indian Army. So 4 of these are located across Arunachal Pradesh. They haven't gone back and doesn't look like they have any intention of going back. Now, I would take you back to 2 earlier episodes of Cut The Clutter, and I will share links for both of these to you. One was 518. In 518, we had traced the history of India-China border disputes and the many occasions when they came close to either settling it or when a concrete proposal came from one side. In one of those, we had also told the story of how Tawang became a part of India, and this was all thanks to Major Raling, now Bob Khating, who was a Tangkhul Naga from Manipur. Tangkhuls are the same tribe as Mr. Muiwa, who commands NSCN, which is now locked in negotiations with Government of India for the final settlement of the Naga issue. So Bob Khating was a major from British times. He had got a military cross and an MBE fighting in what was called as Victor Force or V Force in Manipur. After having served in Hyderabad Regiment and then Kumaon Regiments, 1950 Assam had the big earthquake, and he was then drafted by Nehru government as assistant political officer to assist relief operations in what was then NEFA and which is now Arunachal Pradesh, that is Northeastern Frontier Agency. And he it is who later led an expedition there to generally establish Indian administration and sovereignty over a completely ungoverned and sparsely populated region. And he then marched to this place called Tawang, which had a beautiful monastery, and he had heard that some Tibetan officials were collecting taxes there and he did not like it. So he took 2 platoons of Assam Rifles, which is a paramilitary force, and he removed the Tibetan officials there and he established Indian sovereignty there and Indian control and also an Indian administrative post at Bumla. He was later honored by Government of India as well, Padma Shri, etc., etc. Again, there's a lot of folklore about him. If you go to Wikipedia and sources like that and WhatsApp kind of sources, you will see a lot of rumor mongering that, oh, he went and took over Tawang in defiance of Nehru government. That is not quite true. This was all done as part of government policy, that this was a part of India. And India not being present there, the authority of the Indian government not being present there wasn't helping. So this was time to establish that. And he was one of the heroes who did establish that. And the other episode was about another Chinese activity where they had set up the second village of the same kind just across the line of actual control, and that is towards the middle of the Arunachal sector. And that, if you might remember, is across the river called Sari Chu. So you can see a pattern. The pattern is one that the Chinese have brought in these large bodies of troops. It looked like initially that they were bringing them in either for an exercise or for stability while they were having their CPC, but they haven't gone back. So they are there to stay. Second, the Chinese are building the Shaokang villages facing the line of actual control. This is a dual purpose. If you ask strategic or tactical analysts or military analysts, I would say if I add a bit of politics and psychological warfare to it, it has a triple purpose. One, it is to house a little bit of your population who will then protect the border for you, who will be your eyes and ears, and to also show that you are controlling the area. Second, they will be dual use, so you can use them for your military. But third, because they are built to very modern standards, this is also to convey a message to populations on the Indian side in Arunachal Pradesh that look, we in China are so much better off compared to you. But remember that story we told you about the Indian dog and the Chinese dog? At least on the Indian side, you have freedom of speech. You have the freedom to do many things, which you will not have in China. You can pursue your religion on the Indian side. Your culture will not be affected. In China, you are guaranteed to be Sinicized. And you know what? Since Arunachal Pradesh is back in news, let me also introduce you to 2 books. And these are not new books, and unfortunately both have been out of print for a very long time, and maybe you can find a copy at one of those old bookshops, as I found at least one of them. So this is Himalayan Frontiers by Dorothy Goodman. This is a 1969 book. I found it in one of those quaint old bookshops in London. And this is a book which has the most detailed account of our borders with China, with Tibet, and original maps as well. This is invaluable. This is how the McMahon line is drawn on these maps. You can see the line here. And you know the fact about this line? This was drawn with a thick nib pen. And those days it looked okay. It was just a line on a map. And you know what? A line drawn with a thick nib pen 120 years ago on a map would have looked okay. But today, in an era when satellites can read the number plates of your car or even maybe your two-wheeler, the thickness of this line comes to about 7 kilometers. And that is important to get a perspective on how these disputes arise in terms of on the line, what belongs to who. So these are the facts we must know to get the right perspective on why these disputes arise on the line, because the line is 7 kilometers wide on the ground. So that is one. And the other one is a 1964 book, so it's older than Dorothy Goodman, which is 1969. And I suspect you might still find a copy in a really good bookshop. This is a philosophy for, it says Arunachal Pradesh, but actually originally it was written as a philosophy for NIFA. This is a 1964 book written by Warrior Elvin, who was an amateur anthropologist, worked very closely with Nehru, and it was he who worked with Nehru to devise a politico-cultural strategic approach to Arunachal Pradesh, or what was called NEFA then, Northeastern Frontier Agency. I, of course, in my writings have disagreed with this approach, and I am glad that Dr. Manmohan Singh changed this approach, because under this approach, India had blocked off a lot of development from Arunachal Pradesh, and the idea was to keep it as protected as possible and to allow change only very slowly. So that was called the philosophy of hastening slowly. Dr. Manmohan Singh changed it, or tried to change it, when he went to Arunachal Pradesh, and he announced a lot of infrastructure projects. But you know what? He immediately ran into opposition from within his own party and NGOs, etc., who his own party's leaders were instigating, and those projects stopped. Those are the projects that Modi government is now implementing. These are run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects, but most importantly, these are highways and tunnels, about many of which my colleague Snehesh Alex Philip has been telling you lately.